and welcome to Ribs, Really Itty Bitty Soldiers. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a repeat customer, we are glad to have you. Today, we're going to be continuing our series on Napoleonic rule sets. I'm going to be reviewing 3 different sets of rules, and in the 4th video I'll be doing kind of a recap and doing a side-by-side comparison. This will be the second of the 3 games. If you missed the first one, I will leave a link in the description. Feel free to go back and take a look at that one. It's not necessary to watch that video before this one, but if the recap video is going to make any sense to you, you probably want to watch all 3 of the games. For those of you unfamiliar with Appetizer videos, it's going to be just a short video giving you an overview, kind of a thumbnail sketch of the rules, give you kind of a general idea of how the game is played, and if you to see if you're interested in purchasing the rule set. And for each of these 3 videos, we're dealing with a few different sections. And I'm going to try to keep these in the same order. We're going to start with scale, the scale, ground scale, the miniatures, what a unit is supposed to represent on the table. Then we'll deal with command and control, movement, combat, support for the game, and then I'll give you some final thoughts. Now, today's game is called La Petite Armee. And this is a game that was originally published, I believe the first edition, I know version 4.0 came out in 2003. And they came out with a 4.2, I believe it was last year. These rules were published by Gunnar Bearden, and it is designed mainly as a 1 core versus 1 core battle. You can do multiple core, and we'll get into that a little bit more when I deal with the scale aspect of the game. So let's go down to the table and I will show you La Petite Armee. Okay, so here is a sample core, a French core for La Petite Armee. Now, just a legal disclaimer here. These are based for another rule set. I actually had started basing this army when I first started playing LPA. It used, each brigade was 3 of these little stands here, and they were mounted 4 to a base. So in the new system, infantry and cavalry are mounted 3 to a base, but they are 4 stands. So essentially these 2 individual stands here would represent 4 stands. The maneuvering element is the brigade. This is 1 brigade, this is 1 brigade. And the game, if you're playing 1 core against another, the game can be played on a table as small as 3 by 2. A typical core like this, I think I figured it out, there's approximately 107 figures in this core, and that's not a lot of miniatures to paint. The barrier to entry in this game is very slight compared to other Napoleonic games. So getting into the command and control part of this game, which to me is the highlight of this game, it is my favorite part of La Petite Armee. You start out with your corps general, your corps commander, and you also have lieutenants. And depending on what nationality you're playing, you may have a varying number of lieutenants, more or less than, it's based on the number of brigades that are out there. The French have, and the British have the highest number of 1 lieutenant for every 3 brigades, not counting artillery batteries. So in this particular example, we have 10 brigades. That would mean the French army would have 3 lieutenants. Now, lieutenants can command a group of up to 3 brigades, so long as they're within 3 inches of it. And this lieutenant could command all 3 of these. So what you would do is you would only take 1 order for all 3 of these brigades. So the orders are issued from the commander, and at the beginning of each turn, you determine how many command points you get. And that is based on the number of undemoralized brigades that are out there, plus the roll of a D10. It's actually a D5. You divide it by 2. Everything is resolved in this game with using a D10. So once you determine the number of command points that you have, you get a certain number of these chips. They're green on one side, they're red on the other side. And that is significant. So when you give an order, you can either give it just a regular order, or you can give it an order to rally, or you could do both depending on the situation. If this unit was demoralized, you might want to give it an order to rally, and then if it rallies, you want to give it an order also. So the way you give orders is dependent on two things. How close is your army from the enemy, and whether you're within command range of your general, or if the lieutenant is within command range of the general. An average general has a command range of 9 inches. So if you have 4 orders, and if you are, say this lieutenant is within command of the general, and there is not an enemy unit close by, it doesn't require any command points at all to activate this unit or this lieutenant. If there is an enemy unit within engagement range and they are within command, it takes 1 order. And if they are out of command range, if the general's out of command range and they are engaged with the enemy, it takes 2 orders. You can only give 2 orders to a unit a turn. So you can see that when your army is fresh and they are coming in the board in march column and they're way back here, it doesn't require any orders to move them. However, once you get engaged and you get units start getting shaken and demoralized and it starts sucking these command points, you've got to rally these 2 guys and then move these 2 over here. You start running out of command points. So it's important to figure out where you want to put your command emphasis. So after you've placed all of your order chips, then you roll on a table, a command response table, to see whether that unit follows orders or not. And low is good, high is bad. There are some modifiers. Is the unit in column? Are they unengaged? Is there a leader actually attached to that unit? Now, if you attach the leader, then he cannot command all 3 of these guys. He is attached to the 1 unit. And so you will get a certain number of actions that you can do with that unit. If you roll very high and roll poorly, then the unit will have to withdraw. You can get anywhere from 1 to 3 actions on that, depending on this command response roll. And you roll for each brigade, and even though you would order the lieutenant with 1 order, you still roll for each brigade separately. Actually, you make 1 roll and then you make the modifiers. You determine the modifiers separately for each brigade, because this brigade may be demoralized, this one may be in line, this one may be in column, so there's 3 different sets of modifiers that would apply. So once you determine how many actions that brigade gets, then you proceed to move your brigades. Movement in LPA is very simple. For each action, infantry can move 4 inches, cavalry can move 6 inches. And when you move, you can move anywhere straight forward or over up to a 45-degree oblique. You can also wheel. You measure from the farthest moving unit and we'll go 4 inches, and that's going to be 1 action like that. You can also about face and come back. You can sidle for half movement. Now there's 3 main formations. You have line, then there is attack column, and then there's column of march. Each one has its own advantages and disadvantages. After all the brigades have moved, you then move to the defensive fire phase. So let's say that the French have moved up in their attack column. I think it's actually called field column. They've moved up to a line of British infantry, and the plucky Brits have decided they're going to take a shot at them. Each stand has a fire potential, and later on, as we'll talk about, a melee potential, and that's just a number. So the British stands have a fire potential of 3. So what you do is you just add up the stands, and then you apply whatever modifiers are applicable. And so right now, the British have 4 stands firing into this French field column, which is a total of 12. And that is modified by an additional 50% because the target is in field column formation. So that 12 becomes 18. And to resolve combat, you roll on a 10-sided die. And if the fire potential is more than 10, then you cause an automatic casualty. So in this particular case, the Brits would cause 1 casualty on the French automatically because they have 18 fire potential. And then they roll the 10-sided die to see if they inflict a second casualty, needing an 8 or less. They rolled an 8. So that means that the French would take a second casualty. Once you finish all defensive fire phase, you move to the offensive fire phase. And in this case, the French would be able to fire back on the British. Unfortunately, they would only be able to use the front 2 stands because the rear stands could not fire. And for the French, each stand has a fire potential of 2 for regular line infantry. So that would be a fire potential of 4. We rolled a 7. So that means that the French did not cause any casualties on the British. So let's change it up a little bit. Let's say instead of marching up in field column, the French decided to move up in line and they want to engage the British in a firefight. So in order to do that, you move your unit to within 1 inch of the defender and you declare that you want to initiate a firefight. And instead of 1 round of fire, there's 3 rounds of fire that occur one right after the other in defensive fire, offensive fire order. So in this case, the British would get to fire at the French. They would resolve that combat. The French would take any morale checks that they need to do. Then the French would get to fire on the British, with the British taking morale checks. You go back and forth until either 3 rounds have concluded or until one side becomes demoralized and falls away. So firefights are a little more decisive than just moving up and trying to fire a single volley. Getting back to our previous example, let's go back to our French in their field column, and they decide they want to engage the British in an assault. So they would move up during the movement phase. The British would get to fire defensive fire during the defensive fire phase. Then the French would resolve their offensive fire, and then you'd move to the assault phase. Assaults are handled very much like fire combat in that each side, or each stand rather, has a melee potential. You add up the potential of all the stands, and in this case, all 4 of the French stands would be able to participate in the assault. Then you resolve you make the roll to determine if any casualties are sustained, and then each side would make a morale check at the same time. There are modifiers to the morale checks, and there are multiple types of morale checks. There's casualty morale tests, melee morale tests, panic tests, and then rally tests, which I won't go into a lot of detail in this video. But what's unique about assault combat is that both sides make their morale test, their melee morale test. And if both fail, or if both pass, then you go to a second roll. If you go through 3 rounds of these rolls and one side does not pass and while the other side fails, in other words, 3 specific times when both pass or both fail, then you resolve another round of casualties and you try again. What you're looking for is for one side to pass and the other side to fail. At that point, the side that fails would take an additional casualty for stragglers, and then they would have to fall back and they would be demoralized. Now, the last section I would like to cover before getting into my final thoughts is the support for the game. And I'm just putting a video up showing Battle of Waterloo that I ran a few years back using this game system, just to show you what you can get with this game. This is an 8x4 table showing the entire Battle of Waterloo, so you can fit quite a bit on a table using these rules. Any rate, onto the support. As far as I know, there is not a Facebook page for La Petite Armee. If I'm incorrect, Gunner, please let me know. There is a YouTube channel. Gunner has done a set of videos that provide a much better explanation of the rules than I provided here. His YouTube channel is G57 Games, G57 Games. So there's La Petite Armee, or LPA for short. So this game is kind of in the middle of the road as far as complexity. It is not a simple game, but it also isn't a real brain burner either. Most of the things are very intuitive, especially if you've played any type of linear tactics games before. It is, as I mentioned earlier, I really love the command and control aspect of this game. It is superior to most other Napoleonic rule sets that I've seen. The movement is fairly simple. The combat is, very easy to run. And the support is, at this point, fair. It's not as well supported as other rule sets are. It's also not as well known either. There hasn't been as much advertising about this game, which is one reason why I'm doing this video, because I like the rule set. It flows pretty smoothly. There are some nuts and bolts. There is some chrome on it that you have to learn. And from what I've seen, it plays, if you're doing 1 core versus 1 core, it is a very easy game. It's a small footprint, easy to play. What I found is when I get into multiple core, that rolling all those command response rolls gets to where it slows it down a little bit for me. I think it is a good game. It's a lot of fun to play, and I hope that you will check it out. So that's it for tonight, and if you are interested, check out the other video for the other game that I reviewed. I have one more to do, which I will save the title as a surprise. So tune in next time, and take care, everyone.